Robert Miller sat in his black car outside Bella Vista restaurant, staring at the warm lights glowing through the windows. His hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tight. He really didn't want to do this. "Dad, are we going in?" asked his 16-year-old son Danny from the passenger seat. The boy's wheelchair was folded up in the back of their car. Robert looked at his son and felt that familiar mix of love and worry that never seemed to leave him alone. Danny had been born with a condition that made his legs weak and his movements different from other kids, but his mind was sharp and his smile could light up any room. "Of course we're going in," Robert said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I just wanted to make sure we had the right place." The truth was, Robert had been avoiding places like this for 3 years now. Ever since his wife died, he had kept Danny close to home. Too close, maybe. Their world had become small and safe, but Danny was growing up, and he needed more than just safety. Robert got out and helped Danny into his wheelchair. As they approached the restaurant, he could hear jazz music flowing out every time someone opened the door. Danny's face lit up immediately. "Oh wow, Dad, they have live music tonight." Robert's stomach tightened. Live music meant people would be paying attention to the band area. People would be looking around. People would notice Danny. The hostess greeted them with a professional smile. "Good evening. Table for 2? "Yes, somewhere quiet, please," Robert said quickly. "Maybe in the back corner?" "Actually, Dad," Danny spoke up, "could we sit closer to the music? I'd love to hear the band better." Robert felt his protective instincts kick in. "The corner will be fine," he told the hostess firmly. As they followed her to a table tucked away from the main dining area, Robert noticed Danny's disappointment. But this was better. Safer. Less chance for uncomfortable stares or awkward situations. The restaurant was busier than Robert had expected for a Saturday evening. Well-dressed couples filled most of the tables, and there was a small dance floor near the jazz quartet where a few people swayed to the music. Danny immediately turned his chair to get a better view of the musicians. A saxophone player was taking a solo, and the sound filled the restaurant with smooth, flowing notes that seemed to make everyone relax. "This is amazing, Dad," Danny whispered, his eyes fixed on the band. "Look how the saxophone player moves with the music. It's like the song is coming from his whole body, not just the instrument." Robert watched his son's face transform as he listened. Danny had always loved music, even as a little boy. His wife used to put on jazz records, and Danny would move his arms and shoulders to the rhythm, creating his own little dance from his chair. The memory hit Robert hard. His wife had never been afraid to take Danny places. She had never worried about what other people might think or say. She had seen their son as perfect exactly as he was. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Bella Vista." Robert looked up to see their waitress approaching. She was a young woman with kind eyes and a genuine smile that wasn't the fake friendliness he was used to seeing from service workers. But what surprised Robert most was that she looked directly at Danny first, not at him. "Hi there, I'm Tasha, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. What can I get you to drink?" Danny beamed. "Hi, Tasha. Could I have a Sprite, please? And wow, this music is incredible, isn't it?" Tasha's face lit up with real enthusiasm. "They're one of my favorite groups that plays here. The saxophone player, Tony, has been playing jazz for 30 years. He taught himself how to play when he was about your age." Robert watched this exchange with growing surprise. Tasha was talking to Danny like he was any other customer, asking follow-up questions about his musical interests and sharing stories about the band members. "I'll have coffee," Robert said when she finally turned to him. "Black. Perfect, I'll be right back with those drinks. Take your time looking at the menu." As Tasha walked away, Danny turned to his father with excitement. "Dad, did you hear that? The saxophone player learned when he was 16, just like me. Maybe I could learn an instrument too." Robert's automatic response was to list all the practical problems with that idea. Where would they find a teacher? How would Danny manage the physical requirements? What if it was too difficult and he got discouraged? But before he could voice any of these concerns, the band started a new song. It was slower this time, more romantic, and 2 couples moved onto the small dance floor. Danny watched them with complete fascination. His shoulders began moving slightly to the rhythm, and Robert could see his son's fingers tapping against his wheelchair in time with the bass line. "They make it look so easy," Danny said softly, "like they're floating." One of the dancing couples was older, maybe in their 70s. The man moved carefully, and Robert could tell he had some kind of back problem. But his wife followed his lead with patience and grace, and they looked completely happy together. "Dad, do you remember dancing with Mom?" Robert's throat tightened. "Yes, I remember. She used to dance with me too when I was little. In the living room to her old records. She would push my wheelchair and we would spin around and around until we were both dizzy and laughing." Robert did remember. He remembered coming home from work to find his wife and son in the middle of their impromptu dance parties. His wife would be laughing as she pushed Danny's chair in circles, and Danny would have his arms stretched out like he was flying. "You were both terrible dancers," Robert said, managing a small smile. "The best kind," Danny replied. When Tasha returned with their drinks, she noticed Danny still watching the dancers with longing in his eyes. "The music really speaks to you, doesn't it?" she said, setting down his Sprite. "I love it," Danny admitted. "I love how it makes people move, how it brings them together. I wish—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. "What do you wish?" Tasha asked gently. Danny glanced at his father, then back at Tasha. "I wish I could dance like that. I know it sounds silly." Robert felt his chest tighten. He wanted to change the subject, to order their food and focus on something else. Anything else. But Tasha didn't look at Danny like his wish was silly or impossible. Instead, she got a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know, there are lots of different ways to dance," she said. "Some of the most beautiful dancing I've ever seen doesn't happen on a dance floor." Danny looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Well, I volunteer at a community center on weekends, and we have adaptive dance classes there. People dance with wheelchairs, with walkers, even people who can't move their legs at all. They use their arms, their shoulders, their whole upper body. It's amazing what they can do." Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't want to discuss his son's limitations with a stranger, even a kind one. "That's really cool," Danny said, his voice full of interest. "I never knew that was a thing." "Oh, it absolutely is. Dancing isn't about your legs, sweetie. It's about feeling the music and expressing it with whatever part of your body can move. Some of our best dancers are people who use wheelchairs." The band finished their song and there was a moment of applause from the restaurant. Danny clapped enthusiastically, and Robert noticed that several other diners turned to look at them. His protective instincts flared up immediately. Were they staring at Danny? Were they feeling sorry for him? Robert's jaw clenched and he felt the urge to leave right away. "Should we order our food?" he said quickly, picking up his menu. But Danny wasn't ready to stop talking about music and dancing. "Tasha, do you dance?" "I do. I've been dancing since I was little. My grandmother taught me and now I teach kids at the community center. It's one of my favorite things in the world." "What's your favorite kind of music to dance to?" "Jazz, actually, just like what they're playing tonight. Jazz gives you so much freedom to move however feels right to you." Robert watched his son's face glow with excitement as he talked with Tasha about music. When was the last time he had seen Danny this animated about anything? When was the last time someone had talked to his son about possibilities instead of limitations? The band started another song, this one more upbeat. Danny's shoulders immediately started moving to the rhythm and his fingers drummed against his wheelchair armrest. "You feel it, don't you?" Tasha said with a smile. "The music just gets into your bones." Danny nodded enthusiastically. "It's like it wants me to move even when I'm sitting still." That's exactly what good music should do. Robert found himself studying Tasha more carefully. She wasn't putting on an act for tips. Her interest in Danny seemed completely genuine, and she talked to him like he was a regular person, not someone to be pitied or handled with special care. But Robert still felt uneasy. This kind of attention, this kind of conversation, it made Danny hope for things that might not be possible. It was Robert's job to protect his son from disappointment, wasn't it? "We should probably order," Robert said again, more firmly this time. Tasha nodded and took out her notepad, but Danny was still lost in the music. The saxophone player was improvising now, creating beautiful flowing melodies that seemed to tell a story without words. Danny closed his eyes and let the music wash over him, his whole upper body swaying gently with the rhythm. For a moment, watching his son, Robert could almost see what Tasha had been talking about. Danny was dancing in his own way right there at their corner table. And for the first time in 3 years, Robert wondered if maybe he had been thinking about dancing. All wrong. After they ordered their dinner, the jazz band took a short break. Danny kept looking toward the small stage, hoping they would start playing again soon. Robert noticed his son's excitement and felt torn between happiness and worry. The food. Here smells amazing, Danny said, trying to make conversation with his father. Robert nodded, but he was distracted. He kept noticing other people in the restaurant glancing over at their table. Were they looking at Danny? He couldn't tell if the looks were curious, pitying, or just normal people watching. "Dad, you seem tense," Danny observed. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Robert replied quickly. "Just thinking about work." But that wasn't true. Robert was thinking about how different this evening was from their usual routine. At home, everything was predictable and safe. Here, surrounded by strangers and live music, anything could happen. And Robert didn't like surprises when it came to his son's well-being. The band members returned to their instruments, and the saxophone player stepped up to the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he said with a warm smile. "We're going to slow things down a bit with one of the most beautiful songs ever written. This is In a Sentimental Mood by Duke Ellington." Danny's face lit up immediately. "Dad, I know this song. My music therapist played it for me last month. She said Duke Ellington was one of the greatest jazz composers who ever lived." As the first notes filled the restaurant, Robert watched his son transform. Danny's whole body seemed to relax, and he began moving his shoulders and arms in time with the music. His eyes closed, and a peaceful smile spread across his face. The melody was slow and dreamy, and several couples moved onto the dance floor. They held each other close and swayed gently, lost in the beautiful music. Danny opened his eyes and watched them with pure wonder. "It's like they're floating on the music," he whispered. Robert saw tears forming in his son's eyes, and his heart ached. He knew that look. It was the same expression Danny used to get when he watched other kids running and playing in the park. It was longing mixed with acceptance, hope mixed with sadness. "Danny," Robert started to say, not sure what comfort he could offer. But then Tasha appeared beside their table. Robert had been so focused on his son that he hadn't seen her approaching. "That's one of my favorite songs," she said softly to Danny. "Duke Ellington wrote it in 1935, and it's still just as beautiful today as it was back then." Danny looked up at her with surprise and delight. "You know about Duke Ellington?" "Oh, I love jazz history," Tasha said, pulling out a chair and sitting down next to their table. "My grandmother was a huge jazz fan, and she taught me about all the great musicians. Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Billie Holiday. They were all incredible artists." Robert noticed that Tasha's break had started, but instead of going outside or to the break room like most servers would, she was choosing to spend her time with them. "My music therapist says jazz is good for the soul," Danny said. "She says it teaches you that it's okay to improvise, to make up your own rules as you go along." "Your music therapist sounds very wise," Tasha replied. "That's exactly what jazz is about. Freedom to express yourself however feels right." The saxophone solo began, and all three of them fell quiet, listening to the beautiful melody that seemed to fill every corner of the restaurant. Danny began moving again, his upper body swaying with the music. His fingers tapped complex rhythms against his wheelchair, and his head nodded in time with the bass line. "You really feel the music, don't you?" Tasha said, watching him with admiration rather than pity. "I can't help it," Danny admitted. "When I hear jazz, my body just wants to move. Even the parts that don't work very well want to dance." Robert's chest tightened. He hated when Danny talked about his body not working well. He wanted to change the subject, but Tasha leaned forward with genuine interest. What do you mean, the parts that don't work very well? She asked gently. Danny gestured to his legs. These don't really cooperate with me most of the time, but when I listen to music like this, I feel like maybe they want to dance too, even if they can't. Tasha was quiet for a moment, watching the couples on the dance floor. Then she turned back to Danny with a thoughtful expression. Can I tell you something? She said. I work with kids at a community center, and I've learned that dancing isn't really about legs at all. Danny looked puzzled. What do you mean? Dancing is about letting the music move through your body and expressing it however you can. Some people use their legs, some people use their arms, some people even dance with their faces and their breathing. Robert felt uncomfortable with where this conversation was going. He didn't want Tasha giving Danny false hope about things that might not be possible. I've seen people in wheelchairs who are absolutely amazing dancers, Tasha continued. They use their arms and shoulders and upper body to create the most beautiful movements. It's not about what you can't do, it's about what you can do. Danny's eyes widened. Really? People in wheelchairs can be real dancers? Absolutely. In fact, some of the most expressive, creative dancers I know use wheelchairs. They've figured out how to make their whole upper body tell a story through movement. The song was building to its emotional climax, and Danny was completely absorbed in the music. His movements had become more fluid and confident, as if Tasha's words had given him permission to really let go. You're dancing right now, Tasha observed with a smile. Look at how your body is responding to the music. That's what dancing is. Danny looked down at himself in surprise, as if just realizing how much he had been moving. I guess I am, he said with wonder. Robert watched this exchange with conflicted feelings. Part of him was amazed to see his son so happy and engaged, but another part of him worried about disappointment. What if Danny started hoping for things that weren't realistic? The saxophone solo was ending, and the other instruments joined back in for the final verse. The couples on the dance floor held each other closer, swaying to the romantic melody that seemed to make the whole restaurant feel warm and intimate. Danny watched them with that same longing expression, and Robert saw Tasha notice it too. Then something unexpected happened. Tasha stood up from her chair and looked directly at Danny. Would you like to dance? She asked simply. Robert's heart stopped. Oh no, that's not necessary, he said quickly. We don't want to bother you, and it might not be safe. Dad? Danny interrupted, his voice full of excitement. She's asking me to dance. I know what she's asking, but can I, Dad, please? Robert looked at his son's hopeful face, then at Tasha's patient, encouraging smile. His protective instincts were screaming that this was a bad idea. What if Danny got hurt? What if people stared? What if it was embarrassing? I work with adaptive dance programs, Tasha said gently to Robert. I know how to make sure he's safe and comfortable. But we're in the middle of a restaurant, Robert protested. People will stare. Let them, Tasha said with quiet confidence. They'll be watching something beautiful. Danny reached out and took his father's hand. Dad, I really want to try. Just once. Please? Robert looked into his son's eyes and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Pure, hopeful joy. When was the last time Danny had asked him for something with this much excitement? I don't know, Robert said uncertainly. Trust me, Tasha said softly. I'll take good care of him. The song was still playing, slow and dreamy, and Robert realized that this moment would only last as long as the music did. If he said no, the chance would be gone forever. Danny squeezed his hand. Please, Dad? Robert took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Okay, but be careful. Danny's face exploded into the biggest smile Robert had seen from him in years. Tasha moved behind Danny's wheelchair and placed her hands gently on the handles. Is it okay if I move your chair a little bit? She asked. Yes, Danny said, practically glowing with excitement. Tasha carefully pushed the wheelchair a few feet away from the table, positioning it where Danny could see the band and the other dancers. Then she came around to face him. Give me your hands, she said, extending her own. Danny reached out eagerly and Tasha took his hands in hers. She began to sway gently from side to side and Danny immediately followed her lead with his upper body. "That's it," she encouraged. "Feel the rhythm and let your body move with it." Danny's movements were tentative at first, but as he gained confidence, he began to sway more freely. His shoulders moved with the music, and his arms followed Tasha's. Gentle guidance. Robert watched from their table, his heart pounding. Other diners had indeed begun to notice, but their expressions weren't what he had feared. Instead of pity or discomfort, he saw smiles, warmth, and something that looked like genuine appreciation. The elderly couple who had been dancing earlier stopped to watch, and the woman had tears in her eyes. A young couple at a nearby table had put down their phones and were completely focused on Danny and Tasha. But Danny didn't notice any of the attention. He was completely lost in the music and the joy of finally dancing. His whole face radiated happiness as he moved, his arms and shoulders to the gentle rhythm. "You're a natural," Tasha told him, and her praise made him beam even brighter. As the song reached its final notes, Tasha helped Danny create a simple finishing move, raising his arms gracefully as the music faded away. The restaurant erupted in spontaneous applause, and Danny looked around in amazement, as if just realizing that other people had been watching. "Was that really me dancing?" he asked Tasha in wonder. "That was absolutely you dancing," she confirmed. "And you were beautiful." Robert felt tears stinging his eyes as he watched his son's face. When was the last time Danny had looked so proud of himself? When was the last time he had felt like he could do something amazing? As Tasha pushed Danny's wheelchair back to their table, Robert stood up. He wasn't sure what to say, but he knew he needed to say something. "Thank you," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. Tasha smiled. "Thank you for letting me dance with such a wonderful partner." Danny was still glowing as she helped position his chair back at the table. "Dad, did you see? I was really dancing." "I saw," Robert said softly. "You were incredible." And for the first time in 3 years, Robert began to wonder if maybe he had been thinking about a lot of things all wrong. The drive home was different from any car ride Robert and Danny had shared in years. Danny couldn't stop talking about the evening, replaying every moment of his dance with Tasha. "Dad, did you see how everyone clapped? They really seemed to enjoy watching me dance," Danny said, his voice full of amazement. Robert glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. Danny's face was still glowing with joy, and he kept moving his hands as if he was still feeling the music. "They did seem to enjoy it," Robert admitted, though he was still processing everything that had happened. "And Tasha said I was a natural dancer, Dad, can you believe that?" Robert had to smile despite the complicated emotions swirling in his chest. "I can believe it. You looked very happy out there." "I felt like I was flying," Danny said, dreamily, like the music was carrying me somewhere I'd never been before. When they got home, Robert helped Danny get ready for bed, but his son was too excited to sleep right away. "Dad, can we go back to that restaurant next week?" Danny asked as Robert tucked him in. "We'll see," Robert said, which was his usual answer when he wasn't sure about something. "Tasha said there are dance classes for people like me. Do you think we could find some around here?" Robert felt that familiar tightness in his chest. "Danny, let's not get too carried away. Tonight was special, but we don't want to set ourselves up for disappointment." Danny's face fell slightly. "Why would it be disappointing?" Robert sat down on the edge of his son's bed, trying to find the right words. "It's just, sometimes things seem possible in the moment, but when you really look into them, they're more complicated than they appear." "But Tasha said she works with people in wheelchairs all the time. She made it sound normal." "I know she did, but we don't know anything about her background or qualifications. We need to be careful." Danny was quiet for a moment. "Dad, are you ashamed of me?" The question hit Robert like a punch to the stomach. "What? Danny, no. Why would you ask that?" "Because you always want to sit in the back away from people. And when Tasha asked me to dance, you looked scared, like you didn't want people to see me." Robert's throat felt tight. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From people who might not understand. From situations that might be difficult. From getting your hopes up about things that might not work out. Danny looked at his father with eyes that seemed much older than 16. But Dad, what if some things do work out? What if I never find out because we never try? Robert didn't have an answer for that. He kissed Danny goodnight and went to his own room. But sleep didn't come easily. Over the next few days, Robert couldn't stop thinking about the evening at Bella Vista. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Danny's face during that dance. Pure joy. Complete confidence. His son had looked like he belonged exactly where he was. When had Robert stopped seeing Danny that way? When had he started seeing his son as someone who needed to be hidden and protected instead of someone who could shine? Robert found himself remembering his wife more vividly than he had in months. She had never talked about Danny's limitations. She had only talked about his possibilities. He's going to do amazing things, she used to say. We just have to make sure we don't get in his way. Had Robert been getting in his son's way? On Wednesday, while Danny was at school, Robert did something he hadn't done in years. He started researching adaptive dance programs online. What he found amazed him. There were dance studios all over the country that specialized in working with people who had different abilities. There were competitions, performances, even professional dance companies that included wheelchair dancers. He watched video after video of people dancing in ways he had never imagined possible. Some were in wheelchairs, some used walkers, some had conditions that affected their movement in various ways. But they were all clearly dancers, creating beautiful, expressive art with their bodies. One video showed a young man about Danny's age performing a jazz routine. His wheelchair spun and glided across the floor as he moved his arms and upper body with incredible grace and precision. The audience was on their feet, cheering. Robert felt tears in his eyes as he watched. This young man looked exactly the way Danny had looked on Saturday night. Confident, joyful, free. Robert realized he had been thinking about disability all wrong. He had been focusing on what Danny couldn't do instead of what he could do. He had been so afraid of his son getting hurt or disappointed that he had prevented him from discovering his own strengths. The next day, Robert made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of going straight home after work, he drove to Bella Vista. Tasha was working the lunch shift, and her face lit up when she saw him walk in. "Mr. Miller, how nice to see you again. How is Danny doing?" "He's still talking about Saturday night," Robert said. "In fact, that's why I'm here. I wanted to ask you about those dance programs you mentioned." Tasha's smile grew even brighter. "Oh, I'm so glad you're interested. There are several great programs in the area." She pulled out her phone and showed Robert pictures and videos from the community center where she volunteered. Young people of all abilities were dancing together, laughing, learning, supporting each other. "This is the weekend program I help with," Tasha explained. "We have participants from age 8 to 80. Some use wheelchairs, some have other conditions that affect their movement, and some are completely able-bodied. Everyone learns together." Robert studied the photos. The joy on every face was unmistakable. "How did you get involved in this?" he asked. Tasha's expression grew softer. "My little brother was born with a condition similar to Danny's. When he was younger, he felt left out of a lot of activities. Dance was the first thing that made him feel truly included and capable." "Where is your brother now?" "He's in college, studying to be a physical therapist. He wants to help other kids discover what their bodies can do, just like his dance teachers helped him." Robert felt something shift inside his chest. "Tasha, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. When you asked Danny to dance, weren't you worried about what people might think? About whether it would be awkward or uncomfortable?" Tasha considered the question carefully. "I was thinking about Danny, not about other people. I could see how much he loved the music, how much he wanted to be part of it. It seemed wrong to let him sit there longing for something that was completely within reach. But what if he had been clumsy, or what if it hadn't gone well? Then we would have tried something different. But Mr. Miller, did you see your son's face when he was dancing? Robert nodded. How could he forget? That wasn't clumsy. That wasn't awkward. That was a young man expressing himself through movement, which is exactly what dance is supposed to be. Robert was quiet for a moment. I think I've been making a lot of mistakes as a father. You're not making mistakes, Tasha said gently. You're learning. We all are, all the time. I've been so focused on protecting him that I think I've been limiting him instead. Protection is important, Tasha acknowledged. But there's a difference between protecting someone from real danger and protecting them from life itself. That evening, Robert sat down with Danny after dinner. I've been thinking about what you said the other night, Robert began. About dance classes. Danny's eyes immediately brightened with hope, but Robert could see him trying not to get too excited. I did some research, Robert continued, and I found several programs in our area that work with people who use wheelchairs. Really? Danny's voice was barely a whisper. Really? There's one that meets on Saturday afternoons not far from here. Would you like to try it? Danny's face exploded into the biggest smile Robert had seen since the night at Bella Vista. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Are you serious? I'm completely serious. In fact, I called them today and they said we could come observe a class this weekend if you want. Danny threw his arms around his father's neck. Thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. As Robert hugged his son, he felt like he was waking up from a long sleep. For 3 years since his wife died, he had been so afraid of losing Danny too that he had been keeping him from really living. That night, Robert called his sister in California. They hadn't talked in months. Robert, is everything okay? She asked, surprised to hear from him. I think I'm finally starting to be okay, he said. And I think Danny is too. He told her about the restaurant, about Tasha, about the dance class they were going to visit. Oh, Robert, his sister said, and he could hear tears in her voice. This sounds wonderful. You know, Linda always said Danny was going to surprise everyone with what he could accomplish. I know. I think I forgot that for a while. It's okay to forget sometimes. What matters is that you're remembering now. Over the next few days, Robert found himself looking at the world differently. Instead of seeing obstacles and dangers everywhere, he started noticing possibilities. He watched Danny differently too. Instead of seeing a fragile boy who needed constant protection, he saw a capable young man who had been waiting patiently for permission to explore his own potential. On Friday night, as they were getting ready for bed, Danny said something that stopped Robert in his tracks. Dad, I know you miss Mom a lot. I miss her too. Robert felt his chest tighten. They rarely talked about his wife directly. But I think she would be happy about the dance class. Danny continued. She always said I should try new things, remember? Robert sat down next to his son. She did say that, didn't she? She used to tell me that my wheelchair wasn't a limitation. It was just a different way of moving through the world. I think she would have loved watching me dance with Tasha. Robert felt tears starting to form. She would have been so proud of you that night. And she would be proud of you for letting me try the dance class. Robert looked at his son with new understanding. Danny had been processing their loss too, but he had been doing it while also trying to grow up and discover who he was. And Robert had been so lost in his own grief and fear that he had almost missed watching his son become an amazing young man. You're right, Robert said. She would be proud of both of us. As Robert tucked Danny in that night, his son said, Dad, even if the dance class doesn't work out, even if I'm not as good as I hope to be, I'm glad we're going to try. Me too, Robert said, and for the first time in years, he really meant it. Tomorrow they would visit the dance studio. Tomorrow they would take the first step into a bigger, braver world. And Robert finally felt ready for whatever they might discover together. Saturday morning arrived with nervous excitement filling the Miller house. Danny had been awake since 6, checking and rechecking what he should wear to visit the dance studio. Dad, do you think I should wear something special? Danny asked, for the 3rd time as they ate breakfast. Just wear something comfortable that you can move in, Robert replied, though he was just as nervous as his son. The drive to Harmony Dance Center took 20 minutes. and Danny chattered the entire way about what he hoped to see and learn. "What if I'm not good enough?" Danny asked suddenly as they pulled into the parking lot. Robert turned to look at his son. "Then we'll figure out how to help you get better. But Danny, after watching you dance with Tasha, I don't think being good enough is going to be a problem." The dance studio was in a converted warehouse with high ceilings and big windows that let in lots of natural light. As they entered, they could hear music and laughter coming from the main studio space. A woman in her 40s greeted them at the front desk. "You must be the Millers. I'm Patricia, the program director. We spoke on the phone." "Thank you for letting us observe today," Robert said. "Of course. We love having visitors see what adaptive dance is all about. The Saturday afternoon group is just getting started." She led them to the main studio, where about 15 people of various ages were warming up. Some used wheelchairs, some had walkers, and some moved in ways that were different but clearly purposeful. Danny's eyes went wide as he watched a teenage girl in a wheelchair spinning gracefully across the floor while moving her arms in flowing patterns. "That's amazing," he whispered. "That's Ashley," Patricia explained. "She's been with us for 2 years. She's performing in our spring showcase next month." A young man with leg braces was practicing jumps with a partner who helped support him. His face was concentrated and determined, and when he landed a particularly difficult move, the whole group cheered. "Everyone supports each other here," Patricia noted. "We're not just learning dance moves, we're building confidence, friendship, and community." The class began with a warm-up that everyone could participate in, regardless of their physical abilities. The instructor, an energetic woman named Kelly, led them through stretches and movements that could be adapted for sitting or standing. Danny watched everything with complete fascination. His hands were moving slightly as if he was imagining himself doing the exercises. "Would you like to join in?" Patricia asked quietly. Danny looked at his father with hope and uncertainty. "Go ahead," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "Try it." Danny rolled his wheelchair to the edge of the group and Kelly immediately noticed him. "We have a visitor today," she announced cheerfully. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" "I'm Danny," he said shyly. "I'm 16, and I've never done this before." "Well, we're honored to have you," Kelly said. "Why don't you follow along with whatever feels comfortable?" For the next hour, Robert watched his son discover a part of himself he never knew existed. Danny started tentatively, copying the arm movements and upper body stretches. But as he gained confidence, his movements became more fluid and expressive. During a partner exercise, Ashley wheeled over to Danny. "Want to try this together?" she asked with a friendly smile. They worked on a routine that involved mirroring each other's arm movements while moving their wheelchairs in synchronized patterns. Danny picked it up quickly, and soon they were moving together like they had been partners for months. "You're really good at this," Ashley told him during a water break. "I love music," Danny explained. "I've always felt like I wanted to dance, but I never thought I actually could." "That's exactly how I felt when I first came here," Ashley said. "Now I can't imagine my life without dance." Robert watched this conversation from the side of the room, feeling a mix of pride and regret. Pride in seeing his son connect with someone who understood his experience. Regret that it had taken him so long to give Danny this opportunity. At the end of the class, Kelly gathered everyone in a circle. "Danny, how did you feel about today?" she asked. Danny's face was glowing. "It was incredible. I felt like I was really dancing, like I belonged here." "You did belong here," Kelly said simply. "Dance isn't about what your body can or can't do. It's about expressing yourself through movement, whatever that movement looks like for you." After class, several of the dancers came over to talk with Danny. They shared their own stories about discovering adaptive dance, and Danny listened with wide eyes and growing excitement. "There's a beginner class on Wednesday evenings," Patricia told Robert as they prepared to leave. "Danny would fit right in." "Can we, Dad? Please?" Danny asked. Robert looked at his son's hopeful face and nodded. "Let's sign you up." The drive home was filled with Danny's excited chatter about everything he had learned and seen. "Dad, did you see Ashley's routine?" She made her wheelchair look like it was floating. And Tyler, the guy with the leg braces, he could jump higher than some people without braces. I saw, Robert said, smiling at his son's enthusiasm. And Kelly said I have natural rhythm and good spatial awareness. She thinks I could be ready for the spring showcase if I work hard. Robert felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. When was the last time Danny had talked about goals and dreams with this kind of excitement? That evening, Robert found himself doing something he hadn't done since his wife died. He called his old friend Michael, who had been encouraging him for years to get back out into the world. Robert, it's so good to hear from you. How are you and Danny doing? We're doing really well, actually. Better than we have in a long time. Robert told Michael about the restaurant, about Tasha, about the dance studio. This sounds amazing, Michael said. I can hear the change in your voice. You sound like yourself again. I feel like myself again, Robert admitted. Or maybe I feel like a better version of myself. What do you mean? I think I've been so focused on protecting Danny from disappointment that I was actually creating disappointment. I was limiting his possibilities because I was afraid of my own fears. And now? Now I'm learning to trust him. To trust that he can handle challenges and setbacks. To trust that he's stronger and more capable than I've been giving him credit for. Over the following weeks, Danny threw himself into dance with passion and dedication. He attended every Wednesday class and many Saturday sessions. He made friends with the other dancers and started talking about dance technique and performance opportunities. Robert found himself becoming part of the dance community too. He volunteered to help with transportation for performances and fundraising events. He met other parents who understood the journey of raising children with disabilities, and he learned from their experiences and perspectives. One evening, about a month after Danny started classes, they returned to Bella Vista for dinner. Tasha's face lit up when she saw them walk in. My favorite customers, how are the dance classes going? Amazing, Danny said immediately. I'm performing in the spring showcase next month. Would you like to come watch? I wouldn't miss it for the world, Tasha said with genuine enthusiasm. They settled in at their usual table. Robert noticed that Danny no longer asked to sit in the back corner. He was comfortable being seen, being part of the restaurant's atmosphere. The jazz band was playing again, and Danny moved naturally to the music as he looked at the menu. You know, Robert said to Tasha when she brought their drinks, I need to thank you for something. What's that? For seeing my son the way he deserved to be seen, for treating him like he was capable of amazing things. Tasha smiled. I just treated him like the wonderful person he is. But you did more than that, Robert continued. You showed me how to see him that way too. You helped me remember that being a good father isn't about protecting your child from every possible disappointment. It's about helping them discover what they're capable of. How is Danny doing with all the changes? Tasha asked. Robert looked over at his son, who was chatting with a couple at the next table about the jazz band. Danny was confident, engaged, happy. He's thriving, Robert said. He's made friends, he's developing skills, he's setting goals for himself. But most importantly, he's proud of who he is. And how are you doing? Tasha asked perceptively. Robert considered the question. I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm becoming the father Danny deserves to have. The night of the spring showcase arrived, and Robert sat in the auditorium filled with families and friends. Danny was performing a jazz routine with Ashley and two other dancers. As the music began, Robert watched his son transform on stage. Danny's movements were confident and graceful, his timing perfect, his expression joyful. He commanded the stage with presence and artistry that took Robert's breath away. The audience was completely captivated. When Danny and his partners finished their routine, the applause was thunderous. Robert found himself on his feet, cheering and crying at the same time. After the show, Danny rolled over to where Robert was waiting. Dad, did you see? Did you see me dance? I saw everything, Robert said, hugging his son tightly. You were absolutely incredible. I felt like I was flying, Danny said, his face glowing with happiness and accomplishment. Standing in that auditorium, surrounded by a community of people who celebrated each other's abilities rather than focusing on their limitations, Robert realized how much his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a man paralyzed by fear, keeping his son hidden from the world. Now he was a father who understood that love meant helping his child reach for his dreams, not protecting him from them. "Dad?" Danny said. "Yes?" "Thank you for letting me try. Thank you for believing I could do it." Robert felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you for teaching me what courage really looks like." As they left the theater that night, Robert knew that this was just the beginning. Danny had discovered his passion, his community, his confidence. And Robert had rediscovered what it meant to be a father who empowered rather than limited. The lesson had come from an unexpected place, a kind waitress who saw possibility where others might have seen limitation. But the transformation had happened because they had been willing to take that first scary step onto the dance floor. Some of the most important dances in life, Robert realized, happen when you're brave enough to let someone else lead for a while and wise enough to follow where the music takes you.